What's going on, everyone? Dave Knittel here. Today is Monday, June 18th, not 16th, 18th, and it is day 5 of the World Cup. We are here for another recap on Bros Talking Soccer. I am here, as always, with my brother, Matt Knittel, and we are joined by special guest, Matty Knips from the Underdog Soccer Podcast. Matty, how you doing today?
Doing well, yeah.
Awesome. Good to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about Underdog Soccer Podcast?
Sure. So I'm about 5 months into a podcast. It's called Underdog Soccer Podcast. You can find it at www.underdogsoccerpodcast.com. My Twitter is Underdog SP, I think. Yeah, sounds about right.
Yep.
I started it just because, so I guess a couple months after the Trinidad and Tobago debacle, kind of, I saw that, I was just looking to get more into soccer and everything, and especially in the United States, and I felt like it was an underserved topic. I feel like all the time in the United States, there's plenty to talk about with the MLS, there's plenty to talk about with European soccer, but there's not too much that focuses specifically on the men's national team. So I try and focus mostly on that. Being that it's the World Cup, I'm obviously starting to do a few other things and look into other stuff as well. But, yeah, that's the whole idea behind it, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a great podcast. We'll link to it in our show notes, so you should definitely go check that out. If you're watching on YouTube, I think it's already linked there. And if you're listening on the podcast, it will have already been in the podcast show notes. Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Dave. Some interesting games today. Excited to talk about them.
Me too. So let's get right to it. Before we get to the games, though, there was a big story coming out of the Croatia camp real quick. Kolasinac, who is one of their strikers, apparently was sent home from camp. Croatia won their match. I believe it was 2-0 against Nigeria. They seem to be playing pretty well. And so, Matty, did you have any thoughts on, this whole story kind of breaking?
I really just read the headline and saw that it was some sort of injury that forced the player not to want to go in, which I kind of thought that was a little strange. So usually when you see kind of a disconnect between player and coach or player and manager, it doesn't usually mean anything too positive. So that's probably not the greatest thing to be coming out of their team right now.
Yeah, and so maybe if he was a cancer in the locker room, maybe it was good that he was sent home. So, maybe this will work out. But, now they're at 22 players and apparently don't have a backup for Mandzukic. So, we'll see if that has any impact. Matt, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's just a little surprising. I just saw the headline. I don't know, the details about exactly why I saw it. It was because he said he had back pain. But I feel like there might be a little bit more to that story than him having, a bit of a knock on his back.
Absolutely. And, shout out Mark Lawson, who's been on the podcast before. He's hinted at there's kind of stuff going on behind the scenes in the Croatian FA. So I don't know if that's bleeding into all of this. Seems like there's a lot of politicking going on there. But we wanted to mention that real quick. So keep your eye on that from a Croatia camp perspective, because they're in control of their group right now. And I don't know if this is going to unsettle them. Let's get to the matches today. First up, Sweden versus South Korea. Sweden prevailed 1-0. Before we talk about the game, I want to quickly shout out and thank Bacon Nuts, the user yesterday from YouTube, who pointed out the story that the broadcast talked about Sweden sending scouts to Austria, I think, is where South Korea was based. And the South Korea coach responded by changing up the player numbers in order to confuse confuse the scout. Matty, did you have any thoughts on this story?
Yeah, sure. The first I heard of it, wasn't there something illegal with the way that the Sweden scouts, what they were doing? I don't think they were supposed to be at their, but anyway, it was kind of funny because I did see the interview with the South Korean coach, and he just said, apparently to non-Asians, we all look the same. So I thought that was kind of funny, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it was an interesting story. That's why I didn't necessarily believe it yesterday when that user was highlighting to us, but it turned out to be true. Matt, did you have any thoughts on it?
I think it's strange, the whole scouting at practices thing in general. You can get the scouting from watching film of previous games, and you're pretty much going to learn everything they do at game level. So I mean, it's a funny story, but the whole scout idea at practices in general, I feel like can't be too beneficial.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. At this point, they've played so many games, and the team's not going to throw like a complete formational change. I mean, they might throw in a tactical wrinkle on a set piece. You may be able to learn something there, but the risk reward there, I don't think is that great. So let's actually talk about the match today then. So, Matty, wanted to give you thoughts first. What'd you make of the match?
I was just going to ask a question real quick because, I know in terms of like American football, college and NFL, like they agree to release game footage from team to team. Like, is that a thing with soccer or international soccer at all?
I've never heard that, but with the level of coverage around the world, I mean, I don't even know if they necessarily need to release that. But I've never heard of anything. Matt, have you heard of anything? Yeah. So I'm not certain, to be honest with you, but I mean, especially at the World Cup level, those federations can get whatever game film I think they need.
Right.
Yeah. So what'd you make of the match?
Honestly, I didn't follow it too closely. I don't really know too many Swedish or South Korean players, so it was all kind of unfamiliar to me. It was a little slow. I expected low scoring. I know that Sweden's really good defensively. Sweden's the one that beat Italy, right, in the playoffs. So I knew that they were really good defensively. I expected it to be a low-scoring game. So not really much to say other than that. Who's the guy that plays for? I think he plays for Tottenham, the Korean player.
Yeah, Son.
He's what does he play, like on the wing on the right? He's really fast. I just kind of followed him a little bit, and so I just kind of tried to gravitate towards the players that are the more popular ones when I don't know them. So. But yeah, I thought he played well. They did cover him pretty well, but he's talented. He's fast for sure. So
yeah, and I was surprised at their other winger, how quick he was too. He missed a header late in the game. I think his name was Wong. I could have that wrong, but Matt, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of fouls in that game was really slowing down the pace. That was crazy. Well, there was at the halftime, there was 30 fouls, right?
It was 25 because I was tracking the record because Brazil-Colombia last World Cup was 54 fouls. That was the most I could find. And this was close to that pace. It definitely slowed down in the second half from a fouling perspective, but there was 25 at halftime.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a slow-paced game. Sweden defensively was very, organized. I thought, Son didn't get too many opportunities, or maybe he was holding on to the ball, maybe one touch too many. I thought they did a good job shutting him down. He pretty much got no chances. Sweden going forward, I thought they were going to be a little bit better going forward, going into the final third. Forsberg, pretty much, he was not non-existent, but he didn't seem too threatening in the game, and I was expecting a little bit more from him.
I've seen him play, I don't know, a handful of times at this point, and every time I see him play, I'm somewhat mystified at he's a $60-70 million player. Granted, I haven't seen him play a ton, but every time I've seen him play, I mean, he's a fine player, but he doesn't strike me as somebody who's dominant and who's just taking control of matches the way that you would expect someone at that level to be. I agree with all the stop-start fouling. The one thing that Sweden was doing, they had a very clear tactical plan that they stuck to throughout the match. And so what was happening on the right side of the field is they were attacking strictly through their outside back. He was getting forward, and Klaassen, who was the right winger or right midfielder, was tucking inside. He was basically becoming another forward, and they had 3 forwards basically within the width of the goal, definitely within the width of the 18. And they weren't having any support for that outside back. He only basically had 2 options. It was to play it back to the defender or swing across into the box. And they basically stuck to that throughout the game. So I thought that was really odd. And then on the left side with Forsberg, he was basically just supporting he would tuck inside too, but he wouldn't get as far forward. He was staying more in a attacking midfielder kind of role. And so they basically stuck to that throughout the entire match without really too much deviation. So I thought that was really interesting to just kind of watch and see that, because it really wasn't too effective, like you were saying, Matt. 43rd minute, there was a tackle, Korea on Sweden. That was the play when the guy came through and he almost scissored to a certain extent, and he kind of got the ball with his heel. Matty Knips, did you have any thoughts on that? Do you remember that play? Do you think it was a penalty?
You know what? No, I did write down, actually. I said immediately, yes, that's a penalty for me. And then I remember them showing the replay, and then I was like, no, I feel like he got enough ball on that. And by the naked eye, I couldn't have judged it, but seeing the replay and it slowed down, I don't think it was a PK. No.
Matt?
Yeah, I didn't think it was a penalty. I mean, he won the ball first. I'm trying to remember like the exact commentary on it, but I remember during the commentary, whoever was on the call was like saying how it was like a clear penalty.
I think it was Kobe Jones.
Yeah. And like saying like he did that a couple times throughout the game. He was like, "Oh, clear penalty." When it wasn't clear penalties.
Yeah.
I was just like wondering what he was talking about, but yeah, he like said like he went through the man to get the ball, but it seemed like he didn't touch him until after he got the ball. So I have no problem with that not being called.
Yeah, and he also said it was a scissor, but I don't think it was really a scissor. It was just a natural way that your legs move. I mean, your legs can't stay really far apart, so they're naturally going to come back together. I mean, it'd be one thing on a scissor tackle. A lot of times you'll see that one leg cross over the other, and that's when you're really trying to hurt somebody. But for me, I thought that this was just a normal tackle. So I think I'm in agreement with you guys. I thought Korea, from an attacking perspective, they really had nothing going on. The only thing they really had was one of the wingers on a counter, just running down the side of the field and then trying to swing it across, but usually that was ineffective. So I thought Sweden did a really good job of defending, but Korea was not very good in attack. Already mentioned, I thought Grunqvist, the guy who converted the penalty, who was a center back for Sweden, was the best player on the field. I thought offensively and defensively, because he joined the attack on a handful of times and got involved. So I want to shout him out. He was captain and really carried the country well. Matty Knips, anything else from this game?
I was just going to say, he was the one that had the give and go like real early in the game.
Yep.
Real nice give and go, and he just barely missed it. That was early. That was like first 15 minutes or so.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he was pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the group, by the way, with Germany and Mexico, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Matt?
Yeah, no more really talk about this game, I guess. I was maybe expecting a little bit more creativity, but yeah, that was about it.
Yeah, I was surprised at how harsh the announcers were being on Son. I mean, he was basically the only player for South Korea that was somewhat dangerous, and they were saying that he needs to do more. He needs to get on the ball more. He needs to create more. And it was just like Sweden basically just needed to focus on shutting him down, and they did that. And so I don't know what else they really wanted him to do, to be honest with you. So that was kind of it for me. So let's move on to Belgium versus Panama. So for those who don't know, this match finished 3-0 to Belgium. Matt Knittel, your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I thought Belgium did incredible. It's going to be a common theme today that I was going to just really disagree with the commentators for all three matches. They were talking in the first half, just like Warren Barton was just saying like how bad Belgium were and like how impressive Panama was. And it was just like blowing my mind how Belgium were just completely dominating and just maybe like didn't have the quality on the last shot, but we're still controlling the whole tempo of the game. We're still creating chances. And Warren Barton was just shutting that down.
Yeah, he was acting like Panama was leading or dominating the match when Belgium had 4-5 in the first half, clear-cut scoring chances that they didn't end up converting. So I'm in agreement with you on that front. Matty Knips, what was your take on the game?
So the only negative that I'm going to say about that is I just noticed a lot of like Eden Hazard and Dries Martins, like they had a lot of chances, but in the end, like the shots were just really poor shots. Like there was quite a few that they just skied way over or far to the side. And I felt like, at least in the first half, because I feel like Belgium looked decent in the first half and obviously looked much better in the second. But it was a lot of like really long balls. Like they were just like forcing it and trying to score like right now. And they weren't. It was like they weren't realizing that Panama is really bad and they just need to like play their own game. And so I felt that they were almost letting Panama dictate the game. Like, I'm not saying that Panama played better than them or was even close to them in the first half, but like, the ref could have put on 10 minutes of stoppage time in the first half. There was so much time being wasted from Panama. And you can't really change that, but it just showed that Panama was doing their own thing and they were slowing the game down and they were letting them play these really long balls that weren't connecting. And then obviously Belgium broke through and walked away with it pretty easily. But it's when you have a bunch of high school kids on one team, it's only so long that they can hang with the big boys.
So no, I'm in agreement with you there about the Panama system like really working. They had a very effective game plan. They were sitting back and they were wasting time, and that was their strategy. But it's also from a European perspective, or just from any team who's dominating and who the other team is sitting back and they're trying to just, kind of stifle everything. Naturally, in the first half, that's what's going to happen. The other team's trying to figure them out, and as they continue to prod and press, eventually they're going to break through. So, I mean, I thought that just the natural flow of the game where Panama was looked good in the first half according to their game plan, and then eventually Belgium just sort of put their pieces together. I will say that, Hazard, I thought, was holding onto the ball far too long throughout the game. He had a little bit of what Neymar was doing yesterday, in that I know he was trying to draw defenders in and take hits, but when you're playing against somebody who's just sitting back and defending, you got to keep the ball moving. So for me, I would have liked to see him move the ball more. Matt, Knittel, anything else to add here?
Yeah, I think Belgium did like exactly what they were supposed to. I thought it was weird in the first half, though. It seemed like they were playing like no balls. Like they seemed like they were playing like somewhat direct at times, but not through Lukaku, which I thought was strange for like how big he is and how physical. They weren't playing to his strength, I think, in the first half of him like holding the ball up and getting, the creative people behind him more involved. But then in the second half, he really, became part of the offense. But in the first half, he pretty much did nothing.
Yeah, I thought Torres did a pretty good job on him in the first half, specifically when there were a couple challenges, 50-50 balls. Torres was up there winning it in the air or just putting pressure on him. And so, I think that, I want to give him a little bit of credit. And in the second half, Lukaku started to open things up and get in behind, and, that went away. But in the first half, he did okay. Matty Knips, other things to add here?
I was just going to say, I feel like the game plan of Panama was very similar to what we've seen before. I mean, I'm pretty sure we beat Panama home like 4-0, right? Pretty bad. Yep. And that was towards the end of the cycle. But then in Panama, I think we tied them.
I want to say it was 1-1 if I remember correctly. But yeah.
Yeah, so I just remember playing them, and it was a bunch of little like fouls. They wouldn't let Pulisic do much. They wouldn't let our playmakers do much. So I feel like they did a pretty good job today of the same type of thing where they played to their advantages and played to their skills.
No.
So, yeah.
I'd agree with that. Matt Knittel, anything else to add here?
Yeah, that De Bruyne assist on the second goal was unreal.
Yeah, he's a special player. That outside of the boot flick in between all the players, right to his head. And then Belgium's third goal. So their first goal was, remind me, what happened on their first goal? Why am I blanking?
The volley.
Yeah, the ridiculous volley.
Yeah.
So,
oh, God.
that was absolutely incredible. We can't really, end without mentioning that, because, I mean, that was just fantastic skill from a world-class player. So credit Dries Mertens there. And then the third goal, I thought was just a fantastic break. Hazard did the exact perfect play there where he drew the defender in. He had him turn his hips the one way, and as soon as he did that, laid it off to Lukaku, and Lukaku he is just such a beast of an athlete. And what is he, 25? He's got 35, 36 goals for Belgium already. He's the record goal scorer.
38. Yeah, I think
he's at 38.
Yeah.
Well, so that's actually funny. So it depends on who you believe. So FIFA, just a quick story. So FIFA doesn't count one of the friendlies that Belgium played because they used 7 substitutions. The Belgian FA counts the goals that Lukaku scored in that match because he got a hat trick, but FIFA doesn't. So he either has 35 or 38, depending on who you believe. Wow. So yeah, so there's a little fun fact for you. Hey, that's why you come to Bros Talking Soccer. We got details like that for you. Matty Knips, anything else from this game?
Just going off the Mertens goal, I feel like that's 4 or 5 goals we've seen already that have been amazing goals. Not even just good goals. I mean, there's 5 solid goals that have just been whoa, that was legit.
Yeah. And this is why we love the World Cup. I mean, these are world-class players all playing, condensed matches. It's awesome.
Not many Harry Kane goals.
Yeah, not many tap-ins there.
No.
Matt, anything else you want to add before we move on to Harry Kane in England?
No, we can move on.
All right, let's talk about last game for today. Tunisia versus England. It just finished 2-1 to England. Last minute Harry Kane tap-in header. The dude just scores goals. So, Matty Knips, what'd you make of this game?
So I originally filled out a little bracket, 3 weeks ago or a month ago, and I stuck with Tunisia making it out of the group over England, and it was a stretch from the beginning. I don't know if I want to stick to my guns at this point. But once I saw England play in the first 3 minutes, I was like, they should walk away with this. It should be pretty easy. And as good as they looked the first 10 minutes, things kind of settled in, and Tunisia looked a little better. Obviously, England still played better and pulled out the win, but Tunisia shouldn't have been in the game really in the first place. I mean, they're the team that always looks the best on paper, and then they never really perform. So that was kind of my reason of not giving them as much credit before the game.
Okay, and so real quick before we move on, I want to shout out Matty, who before the Belgium game called 3-0, so he was right on that, and then before the England game predicted 2-1 England, and he was right on that. So that's pretty impressive. 2 straight games, 2 correct score predictions. Matt Knittel, what'd you make of the game?
Yeah, so the first, like you said, 10 minutes, England came out on fire. I was like so surprised, like, wow, England is, what the media is making them out to be. Like, I didn't think they were going to be anything special looking at their players, but they came out so strong. And then pretty much after that 10, 15, 20-minute mark, they became the England I kind of expected. Tunisia shouldn't have been in the game. They created very little. England was definitely better, but it's such a dumb mistake from Walker. Like the penalty, I think it could. I'm not saying it wasn't a penalty, but for what the ref called and like on the crosses, like what was going on with Harry Kane, for him to call that penalty is ridiculous.
Yeah, and was the guy's name Yusuf? I think it was Ben Yusuf. Is that his? Yeah, I think that was the guy who went down. Throughout the game, he was going down very easily. I made a joke on Twitter that him and Ashley Young were having a contest for, who could dive the quickest, because both of them were going down pretty easily. So I'm with you, Matt. If they didn't call it, I probably would be okay. But the fact that he got his arm just up a little bit, like center backs always just kind of stick out their arms like around their sides just to, feel the player behind them, sort of block them off. I just don't know why he put his arms so high. So I was fine either way, but the fact that they called it, I didn't think that it should have been reversed or anything. I think it was slightly soft, but, I think it, at the end of the day, was a penalty. I thought Henderson looked actually really good for England throughout the match. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Liverpool fan. I thought that he had a couple plays with, he had that one ball, it came to him, he hit it on the kind of the half turn over the top to Dele Alli to spring an attack that England probably should have scored when Dele Alli played it across to Sterling, and I think it got cut out, or maybe he whiffed on it. I can't remember exactly what happened, to be honest with you.
Yeah, probably.
Exactly. So I thought there was that. He had the thunderous volley. I thought he had a couple really long balls that were really effective. So I thought he played pretty well throughout the match. And I thought England early on were really fluid with their attacking midfielders. So you had Dele Alli, Sterling, and Lingard. I know Sterling was a forward, but he more or less functioned like a player. They all kind of sort of were interchanging. I thought that was really interesting to see. And then that kind of all sort of went away as Tunisia grew into the match. And I thought Tunisia was doing a much better job. And on the whole, from the total performance, as dominant as England was early on, I thought Tunisia was a little bit hard done not to get a draw out of that, because outside of the last second kind of goal from Harry Kane, I can't remember too many opportunities where England had like just a clear cut, hey, they should have scored this. Can you guys remember any?
Well, in the first couple minutes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. After that first bulk of play, once Tunisia grew into the match, I'm trying to remember if there was any sort of, hey, England definitely should have scored here.
There was a solid 60, 70 minutes there where it was pretty even.
Yeah.
After the first 15, 20 minutes.
I'd agree with that. Matt, do you want to talk about Harry Maguire?
Yeah, so the commentators were speaking of Harry Maguire so highly. I thought it was so strange. He was not moving off the ball. When they were swinging the ball, like the way they were trying to say that England has adopted this Pep Guardiola style of play, and like they're just like trying to become like Man City for some reason. They kept bringing this up.
No, they were talking about Tunisia. Tunisia was trying to do that. That's what they were talking about.
That doesn't make sense.
No, because I think the Tunisian coach, right? I don't know. You know what? Actually, I could be wrong. Matty Knips, you're the tiebreaker here. Were you listening to the commentary close enough?
I don't remember that. Sorry.
Yeah. Either way, I watched every Man City game the last 2 years. Neither of those teams were resembling a Pep Guardiola style of play. And Maguire, when they were rotating the ball through the back, he just doesn't move. He's so like immobile, and they were just praising how well he is with like the ball on his feet and going forward. And I'm like, this guy's not even moving to get open. He's not getting into the lanes to get open for the pass. I think he definitely needs to be replaced going forward, especially as they, hopefully advance to the knockout stages. I don't think he can, keep up I know he's a huge body, but I don't think he can keep up like mobily with this level of play.
Yeah, it was always interesting for me how highly Southgate rated him, because I always thought he was a good center back. I think he's a good Premier League center back, but I know he dropped Smalling and he dropped some other center backs because they couldn't pass. And Harry Kane doesn't strike me as somebody who's pretty adept at passing and dribbling and ball control, which is what they're looking for out of this team. So, I just find him an interesting choice, but I thought he played okay on the day. I don't think he was great, but I just don't see it, and I don't know. So that's something to keep an eye on. Matty Knips, did you have any thoughts on Maguire or see anything that we're mentioning here?
They did kind of say he was the one that they said like he was winning everything in the air as well, right?
Yeah,
and he was.
I guess technically he did have the assist on the last goal, right? And he didn't have the assist on the other one, did he?
No, I think John Stones. Yeah,
okay. No, I was getting those two kind of mixed up, but no, not too much. I did remember there was I wrote down in like the 25th minute. I wasn't specific enough, but Walker's defense was a little sketchy. I don't know what was happening in the 25th minute. I guess I should have been a little bit more specific on my directions, but no, not too much about him.
His defense is always a bit sketchy, but he can make up for it with his pace. Yeah. One thing I want to say is that I found it interesting. Young and Trippier, however you pronounce it, were the designated free kick takers. I mean, I thought that they did okay, but and I can understand them taking the corner kicks, but the free kicks that they took in the really dangerous positions, I don't know. I would have thought maybe Harry Kane when Rashford came on. I know he hits really good free kicks for United. I just found it interesting that they were the designated free kick takers. Matt, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought it was strange. I mean, I don't think it has any. My friends were texting me about that, like, oh, why are the outside backs taking it? I don't think it has anything to do with the outside backs. I think it's just the other players on the field. Like Kane takes them for Tottenham a lot of the time, and then out of nowhere, like Trippier is the designated England guy, and it's like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Matty Knips, any thoughts on that?
I was thinking the same exact thing, because from like the more dangerous areas, 25 in, you would expect somebody that can put one on frame, and it's going to be a little scary, a little deadly. And I just felt like both of their Young and Trippier's balls were not really that scary, really that, anything that the keeper for Tunisia had to immediately defend on. So no, I wasn't. I was curious about the same thing, why they were taking them constantly.
Yeah, and it's not like either of them are Kolarov. Like Kolarov has an absolute thunderbolt of a shot and can, kind of put the ball wherever. Neither of them are really well known for this. So I don't know. It was just something weird and interesting to see that I happened to note. Matty Knips, anything else from this game you wanted to highlight?
A couple little things. I'm gonna hate on Raheem Sterling for a minute for a little more, and maybe it's just my my Liverpool bias. But I did think Jordan Henderson first played really well, and he did have a couple really good balls. But also, I remember just thinking early in the game, like, and maybe it was there, and I did write down, like, maybe that was Tunisia's game plan, was to just give him hell, because it seemed like every single time Sterling got the ball, he had 2 or 3 defenders immediately around him. And I know he's a good player, and maybe it wasn't his day. Hello?
Yeah, we're still here. Christian, other brother, just jumped in here.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, sorry. Keep going.
No worries. So I was just saying, like, I know he's obviously a solid player, and probably today it wasn't his day, but I thought just about every single time that he got the ball, it was just a little messy, and he wasn't doing anything with it. He was losing the ball often. He was, not being productive with it. So that's all I was going to really say about him. Yeah. I think that from me.
Yeah, I agree with that. He was giving the ball away a little easy, but the way England were forcing the ball into him and Lingard, like they're forcing like long balls into them in certain instances, and like with like nowhere for them to go. I thought it was so strange, some of the passes and like the way they were attacking and not really going through Kane at all. Whereas I think he's up there with one of the best strikers in the world. It seemed like he was, not really involved in the build-up play or like in the attacking third that often. I mean, he got the 2 goals off the set pieces, but I mean, in the open play, England weren't creating anything.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, other than Kane's 2 goals, name one good thing that he did in the game.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of his game to an extent. I mean, that's he just scores. He gets in positions to score, and as a striker, that's his job. Christian, so for those, Christian has joined us. He has gotten out of work. Christian, how's it going?
It's just great, Dave. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. What was your take on the England game?
It was a little dull. I wasn't really entertained the whole time, I'm going to be honest, but England, I think, were the better team over the 90 minutes and probably deserved to win, but that's a tough one for Tunisia to take. I think they probably could have taken a point out of that game, and no one would have really questioned the result if they had, but I don't think anyone's questioning it that England won either.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much a lot of thoughts that we had before you joined. I wanted to, so JS joined us. JS from yesterday just had a comment about that. He thought Maguire was actually pretty good. Christian, I know we were kind of railing on Maguire to an extent. I know Matt really was not a fan of him. I thought he played fine. I just his game is just interesting. Just the way he plays is interesting to me. He doesn't seem to be great with the ball at his feet. He had a couple moments where he almost gave the ball away.
Yeah. In the first half.
Yeah,
he had those 2 horrible giveaways.
Yeah, and then he also had some interesting passes that he played. And so again, I thought he played fine. It was just him suited to this style. I didn't see it. So did you have thoughts on Maguire, Christian?
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with John about this as well. And I was saying that you can't have all ball-playing center backs. You need someone who's actually a center back who will defend as well. And I said, for every PK, you need a Puyol. That's kind of how I always look at it. You need someone who's going to have the heart. And obviously, I understand Maguire is not Puyol. I'm not saying that in any way.
Sounded like you were.
You need someone who is more of like a leader and defender and outspoken. And I don't know if Maguire is really that, but he is definitely someone who likes to defend more than Stones. Walker's more of an attacking type of defender as well.
Yeah, I mean, PK is playing with Sergio Ramos, and they're pretty 2 attacking center backs right now, and I think they could be the best center back pairing in the tournament.
That's possible, but I still would take Hummels and Boateng over them because of their defensive work, and because Hummels is more of a...
So you like the balance. You like the balance between possession and ball playing. And I get that too, but I thought Southgate has come out and said he's only taking center backs who play the ball and who are good with it. And so that's what I found to be interesting from the whole situation. I thought that, JS is mentioning Dyer. I thought Dyer may have been a better fit for that because he plays in midfield and he can play the ball out of the back and he can be that big physical guy.
He's switched to center back for Tottenham, right?
I think it depends. It depends on their injury situation and whatnot. I know Alderweireld was out for a long time this year, so Dyer was playing maybe a bit more center back and, all of that. But Matty Knips, anything else you wanted to add before we talk about the games for tomorrow?
One last thing about Kane. There was a couple times we were talking earlier, I just didn't get a word in then, but there was a couple times where he kind of got tackled in the box. And there was a couple questions about should it be a PK. I did notice once where somebody was on his back, but he was the arm that was wrapped around him, he was grabbing the guy's arm, and it looked perfect, the guy was tackling him. But and I'm not saying every single time that he got tackled, because it did happen a couple times. I'm not saying every single time that Kane was the guilty party, but there was definitely one time where he did pull the Tunisia player down with him, and he made it good too.
You're talking about on the corner kicks, right? When there was a lot of physical play.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good.
I was just going to say maybe that had to do. Maybe the ref had a better view than us, and maybe that was the reason why he kind of just let it play on.
Yeah, and especially at that level, you got dark arts working both ways. So defenders are doing things, but attackers are doing things to make it look like the defender is committing the foul. And so I know from a lot of the replays and views we saw, it looked like Kane was being tackled. But that's a good point. That I don't know, maybe Kane wasn't fully innocent there. Matt, do you have something to say?
Yeah, well, this is the first game where I think this was the first poor performance from the referees. I thought there was a lot of missed calls, and especially with there was 2 offsides calls that I completely disagreed with in the game. And I know the refs are instructed to leave their flag down, and the one was the Tunisia play where he beat Pickford to the ball in the corner, and Pickford was completely out of his goal. And I don't know if he was off. It was very close, and like they should have let that game, like they should have let it play out and see what happened, and then just VAR it. I think a couple times. And another one was I think Dele Alli, when he had the bang bang with the goalie and almost got a touch on it, and England almost scored. They called him offsides, and I don't think he was offsides.
That's a good point. Yeah, that was interesting to watch.
And a couple of the foul calls, I think, just didn't go the right way.
I thought the ref. So yeah, I think that they missed a couple calls, but I wouldn't say it was a poor performance from the referee. If anything, I thought was it South? I think it may have been Sweden, South Korea. I thought the referee wasn't the greatest. Yeah, with all the fouling
coming in hard for some of those tackles.
Yeah, but Christian Knittel, anything else to add on this game before we talk about tomorrow's matches?
No.
Okay.
There was apparently like a pretty bad elbow in the face from Ashley Young in like the first 5 minutes of the game, like right on the sideline. And they never went. And I vaguely remembered it was on the guy that you said him and Ashley Young were trading, being on the ground.
Yeah.
And I think it was like Taylor Twellman or one of those guys mentioned on Twitter about like, that's a red card right there. Use VAR for it, and that's automatic. And that was like 5 minutes in.
Twellman will have a comment.
Christian,
what?
What are you saying?
I said, God forbid anyone touches anyone in the head. Taylor Twellman.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But so on that play, actually, I was okay with it. I thought Yusuf and Young were both sort of like Jocelyn, and then it was almost similar to the Walker play where Yusuf almost put his head a little bit further down, and Young definitely did catch him, but I feel like it wasn't like a deliberate like swing of the elbow. It was kind of more just like a natural, like when you're feeling somebody and trying to hold somebody off. I know it looked really bad on replay, but for me, having been in certainly not at that level, but played in soccer matches, that happens sometimes. And so for them to review it and give a red card, I thought would have been harsh there. Matt, did you have any thoughts on that particular play?
I didn't even see the replay.
Yeah,
they replayed it either. Yeah, that's what I wanted. It was a replay because I only saw it live.
They showed one replay of it, so I happened to see it on that. So, yeah, so something to look out for, I guess, moving forward. So, but for me, it wasn't a red card. Let's talk about tomorrow's matches. So we got Colombia versus Japan, the first match, then Poland versus Senegal, and then Russia versus Egypt. Man, I'm stumbling over my words today. Christian, you want to kick us off since you haven't been here for a little bit? What are your thoughts on those matches?
Yeah, sure. I think Japan are one of those teams that are really dangerous on set pieces. We've seen it in the past with them, and I haven't seen them in a while, but I know they always come with these weird set plays that are off the training ground or are just really good on direct set pieces. So I would be careful if I'm Colombia fouling there, but I still think Colombia come through. They just have too much quality and they have the experience. So I'm going to say Colombia wins that one. Second game is
Poland, Senegal.
Portland.
Okay. Yeah, Portland. Yeah, I forgot. Okay. I'm actually going to go with Senegal wins this one and surprises a lot of people. I think they're the best team from Africa, and I always am going to side with Sadio Mane on this one. So I'm going Senegal beats them with a one-goal win, probably 1-0. And then the last game, you're going to see Salah finally, and I know Russia won 5-0 in their first game, but it was against probably the worst team in the tournament. Well, actually, it is the worst team in the tournament, pretty much statistically, and I'm thinking Egypt wins this one, gets back into the groove here, and Salah's going to score tomorrow. I'm predicting that.
All right. Matty Knips, your thoughts on tomorrow's matches?
I'll go with Colombia over Japan. I think, James is going to have a really good game. I'd say probably, it's going to be a little closer, but, I do think Colombia is going to win 2-1 maybe. With Poland and Senegal, as much as I'd love to agree with you on Sadio Mane, because I'm a Liverpool fan as well, I'm going to have to go with Robert Lewandowski. He's, all that the guy does is score goals, so I feel like Poland's going to win that one. I'll say 1-0. And then Mo Salah is going to beat Russia. I don't even know who he plays for, but Mo Salah is going to win. Yeah. He's in the lineup. I mean, is it officially confirmed yet?
I don't think anything's confirmed yet.
Yeah, and I wasn't even even though Russia won 5-0, like I honestly wasn't that impressed, being that Saudi Arabia was so terrible. So I do think that the way, after watching both Russia play in their first game and Egypt play in their first game, I do think that Egypt is the better team. So I do think Egypt beats Russia. I also, in my podcast, I claimed that Mo Salah was going to get 4 goals in the group stage. So he's got some work to do to catch up.
Yes, he does. Christian, you were trying to chime in with something there? Christian?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. All right. Maybe there's just noise coming from you. Matt, what are your thoughts on the games tomorrow?
Yeah, so I'm excited to see Colombia play, especially after the last World Cup. And 4 years went by; they were kind of like new and upcoming last World Cup, and to see like how James is going to perform again at the world stage, because last World Cup he was incredible, and that's kind of what brought him onto like the scene he's at now. So I think Colombia is going to win that game. They have so much in attack and just such creative players, so quick on the counter. So I'm excited to see that. Next game, Poland, but Portland.
Yeah,
Portland, Chicago Fire, right? No, it's I have Poland beating Senegal in that. Lewandowski, I'm big on Poland this World Cup. I think if they can, rely on Lewandowski to, get the goals, I think they're very organized, like throughout the team. So I think they're going to be able to hold off Senegal. And Lewandowski is going to, knock in some goals. And the last game, I have Russia and Egypt tying. I don't know about Salah's form. I mean, it's Mo Salah, he's fine, but I don't know about his health and how he's going to do coming back for his first game in the World Cup. Russia surprised me with their first game. I picked them to come out of the group stage. So if they get a point here, that's going to be huge, especially with the five goal difference.
Yeah, that's a good call. So for me, I have Colombia, Japan ending 1-0 to Colombia. I just think they have too much quality in there, and I think Davinson Sanchez and that Colombia back line is going to hold off Japan. I don't think they have too many threats going forward in attack. I know they got Shinji Okazawa. Who's the Leicester striker? Help me out. Okazaki, thank you. And Kagawa running from midfield. But I just think Colombia can hold them off. I think that's going to end 1-0. Poland versus Senegal. I hope to God Senegal wears those green awesome jerseys. Those are my favorite jerseys in the tournament, with the lion kind of faded in the background. And so in addition to that, I hope it's I think it's going to be 1-1. I think that Senegal has a lot of talented players, and as good as Poland is with their European pedigree, I think that Senegal has enough to get a result there and make things in the group really interesting. And then I have Egypt beating Russia, maybe something like 3-1. I wasn't too impressed with Russia. I just thought Saudi Arabia was that bad in that first match. Russia didn't play that great. They had a couple just terrible giveaways. And if Saudi Arabia was just competent, I think that game may have been a bit closer. And Egypt played fantastic against one of the strongest, honestly, countries at this World Cup. I really like Uruguay, and they played so well defensively. They just didn't have somebody in the final third. And if Salah is going to be there and contribute in the final third, I think this might end 3-1 to Egypt. So, Matty Knips, anything else you wanted to add before we get out of here?
I just remembered you remember at like the 92nd minute, Panama almost kind of scored a goal from like 80 yards out, and Courtois actually had to step back and knock it out. I just thought that was kind of funny. It was maybe their best chance.
Yeah, and I think that was even after the whistle had blown, so I don't even think it would have counted.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I got.
All right, cool. Christian, you have anything else you want to chime in with from the car?
No, I'm sure you guys covered everything.
Okay. Matt, anything you wanted to mention?
No.
Cool. Listeners of the podcast, thank you for tuning in. People watching on YouTube, specifically JS, thanks for being here, sending in comments. Shout out Bacon Nuts, the user from yesterday who gave us some comments. So if you were listening on the podcast, again, thank you so much for listening. But we also record this thing live on YouTube. We'll link to the channel in our show description, so come join us. We record usually around 4:15 Eastern time, 1:15 West Coast time, where I am, after the World Cup matches end every day. We're recapping the matches, so come hang out with us. If you want to get in contact contact with us, we're on Twitter at BT Soccer Pod. We also have an email, bros.talking.soccer@gmail.com. We also have a website, brostalkingsoccerpodcast.com, where you can read about us, check out past episodes, and so much more. Also, definitely go check out Underdog Soccer Podcast.com with Matty Knips. He's talking U.S. national team and all of that. Matty, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Christian and Matt, thank you for being here. Everyone else, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See you, everybody.